Cool. Okay. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today to hear us talk about the importance of soft skills and networking. So in the next 25 to 30 minutes, we're going to be sharing a couple of things. So one is the importance of soft skills. The next is benefits that we've all experienced from investing in building our network. And Harry and Ali shared their fears when it came to networking as an ESL student, and we're gonna share our personal tips and tricks when it comes to both soft skills and networking. So to kick it off, I have an idea. How about we use our elevator pitch to do our intros? Harry, do you wanna go first?
Sure, happy to do so. Hello everyone, my name is Harry. I grew up in China and then came to Canada when I was 17 years old. In college, I learned engineering, and in the first summer, I couldn't find anything, so I created a job for my own. I built a startup, raised about $300,000, and then later it led to many tech internships, including at Google as well as Bloomberg. But I really realized that my passion lies in entrepreneurship. That's why I'm taking a few years in management consulting. Later this summer, I'll be joining the McKinsey Toronto office and started my new career.
Awesome. Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my name is Bryan Ali. I grew up in a tiny country on the western coast of Africa called the Gambia. I came into Canada at the age of 16. Throughout university, I joined engineering because I wanted to help people to make the world a better place. So I focused on social good through different initiatives. A startup aimed at reducing food waste, household food waste through an IoT smart device. I volunteered for a hospital to work on a machine learning algorithm to detect cancer. And my journey, I ended up at Google to develop my engineering skills further. And at a certain point, I see myself pivoting into business to acquire more business skills.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go next. So hi everyone, my name is Nandana. I was born and raised in India. I came to the US about 2.5 years ago to get my master's in CS, mainly because I wanted the exposure of living in another country and also wanted to learn more regarding CS. So after a year of grad school, I interned at Bloomberg, where I discovered my love for UX, product design, and app development. After graduation, I joined a super early stage startup, but I realized I was missing out on the mentorship. So currently I'm working as a software engineer at Amazon. I'm working on Audible's Android application. I'm one of the 40 engineers who's getting to work on an app that has about 50 million users. And I'm extremely passionate about product design, social impact, and all things business. So Ali, what about you?
Well, the bar is pretty high, but I'll try to follow. My name is Ali. Like Brian, I was born and raised in Africa. I grew up in Morocco. Then I came to Canada at the age of 17. And in my first year, I essentially did the International Foundation program where I refined my English language and frankly, like learned how to speak English. And then I joined U of T studying applied mathematics. I did a couple of internships in finance. I worked at Manulife, Goldman Sachs, on a tech startup. And I graduated last year and joined management consulting route. Since then, I've been working at a bank company for the past 10 months. Outside of work, I'm very interested by sports, startups, tech, and art. So if you have any interest like this, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat more with you.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we have a poll coming up regarding our elevator pitches. So let's see. I'm just gonna launch the poll now. Cool. Okay, so the question is, what stood out to you most about our pitches? So we have these 4 options. One is the length, Ali's accent, and then we have impact, and we have delivery.
Wow.
Wow. Okay, so impact is winning.
So my accent is not that popular.
It's coming second though.
Cool. We can end the poll, I guess. Okay, so impact wins. That's pretty interesting. So I think Bryan will probably take a minute to, critique all of our pitches, talk about the good aspects, and talk about the areas of improvement. Bryan, do you want to take it from me?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I see a clear pattern between the different ways we gave our elevator pitch. We summarized our experiences in a succinct manner, so a clear, concise manner, sort of extracting the impactful experiences, the important pieces that we get across to the audience, and that was good. We all managed to do that. I think Nandana and Harry, including myself, didn't mention any personal hobbies. That might be, I think Ali did, and that might be something that could make it better and make you seem more personable. But that's a minor thing. So again, like, it short, we kept it concise. We said what we wanted to say, sort of gave an image of who we are professionally, and personally. Now, I think we did it well.
Awesome. Okay, so just to summarize, I'm going to talk about the key characteristics of a good elevator pitch. So number one is it must be short. So you have to keep it somewhere between 30 seconds to 1 minute. And because it's short, you have to make sure that it delivers a punch. So that's exactly where your impact and experience come in. So that's where your numbers come in, and you have to make sure that you're grabbing attention. And another one that you have to think about is make sure that you're delivering your elevator pitch with confidence. And the last and most important aspect is the storytelling aspect. You have to tell a story that flows. And coming to storytelling, I think another area where storytelling plays a huge role is soft skills. So I believe that soft skills are extremely crucial when it comes to both tech and business industries. And both of these areas have behavioral components, behavioral interview components, so we can't really escape soft skills. So we're going to expand on that specific to our industries. But what other areas do you guys think soft skills play an important role? Harry, what about you?
I think last week we talked about 4 pillars in management consulting, namely number 1, personal impact, number 2, problem-solving skills, number 3, entrepreneurial drive, and number 4, leadership abilities. I think 2 of them are extremely relevant to soft skills. They're evaluated both in the behavioral interview as well as in the case interview. I think these are the number 1 leadership abilities. Are you able to create a vision and persuade a team to follow you to execute on that vision? The second is your personal impact. Are you able to work on a team and help the team succeed? So in short, personal impact and leadership abilities.
Wait, Nandan, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I said those were super insightful thoughts. Bryan, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So when thinking about the importance of soft skills, it's often overlooked, the importance of soft skills in the work itself rather than for the interview prep. So an example of this is your communication skills. In technology, you need solid communication skills to discuss your work with your team members, with your manager, for example, to convince senior management of your opinion or of a feature that you want to release. So it comes up over and over, and it's underrated, the importance of a skill like communication skills throughout your career.
Amazing. Yeah. So another aspect when it comes to tech is all tech companies right now are huge on checking for culture fit. And they do that through their behavioral interview component. So you're going to have a behavioral interview sometimes right at the beginning, which can be your single point of failure, or you're going to have behavioral interviews throughout your on-site. There can be multiple. And behavioral interviews are when you get asked open-ended questions like, tell me about a time you demonstrated leadership abilities, or tell me about a time a teammate disagreed with you and how did you work out or resolve that conflict. So communication skills really help you stand out in these interview components, and delivering it well will always make you sound smarter. And another area where soft skills play a huge role is taking up initiative, and also the big initiatives which require coordination between different teams. And with that, I'm gonna ask Ali to talk about the areas where he thinks soft skills are important.
Well, I think frankly you guys said it all, but just to rehearse and maybe like add something to it is that it's not just useful in the professional aspect of things, it's also very useful on the personal one. To me, I'm a big believer that the people you work with, the people you network with, in order to make this effective, you have to develop a personal relationship to an extent. And this is where communication and soft skills really come into place to show your charisma, your personality, and how different and unique you are.
Amazing, yeah. So do you guys have any suggestions for students to work on their soft skills?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most common approaches I take when preparing for anything is by learning the theory first. So there are multiple classes out there on common popular websites and through different sources that you can leverage. Classes include, classes on communication, project management, time management, and various other skills. So that's a recommendation I have, like nail the theory down before trying to practice.
Amazing. Harry, what about you? What are your suggestions?
I typically follow a 4-step strategy. Number 1 is to really understand how good is each of your skill, and then evaluate it against the criteria for your target firm. And second is to make a plan and allocate enough time so that you can have enough time to develop these skills. 3 is really put these soft skills to use, whether it be a startup or a student club or any activities, because the soft skills only become yours when you use them. Last but not least is to have a mentor or buddy that can continuously coach you and give you feedback, because soft skills are extremely subjective and having a second opinion matters a lot.
Yeah, that's something that I completely resonate with. And my suggestions would be, and this, I have mainly 2, and one is sometimes overlooked when it comes to soft skills. It is being a good listener. So make sure you're practicing active listening. And by active listening, I mean listen to understand and not listen to just respond. So as human beings, when someone is speaking, we automatically start forming a response in our head, and we don't pay attention to what the other person's saying. So instead of that, just listen to understand, and also repeat what the other person said. Just pick a couple of words from what they said and repeat it back to them, so it makes they feel like they're really heard, and it makes them feel important. And another one is the storytelling component. So where do you get these stories from? So personally, what I did is a lot of introspective work. So I thought about all of the challenges that I faced, all of the different projects that I worked on, and everything that I've done in the past, and sat down with myself and really did that introspective work and figured out my core values and passions. And that is where all of my stories have come from. And Ali, what about you?
Again, I'm unfortunately speaking last, and it's difficult for me to add on what you said, but I'd love to reiterate and give you like concrete example of the components that I use. So to me, like there are 3 things that I stood out. The first one is the theory that Brian mentioned. I actually went on and looked for a book about communications. Like one of them is like how to win, friend, and influence people. And like I studied that book pretty much. Then it comes to like the application of it. Nandana, you mentioned active listening. And then I actually go further, not just try to listen to what they say, but I also have like usually like my notes app from my phone open next to me. And whenever they turn their head, I write like a key vocabulary word that they use. And then whenever like I have free time and I feel like it, I just actually like read the vocabulary words. And this allows me to significantly expand on my vocabulary and the sentences that I use. And the last one is the one that Henry mentioned of having a mentor and a buddy. Like we have mentioned the importance of mentorship last time, and this, I cannot emphasize enough on it. For communication, I had countless mentors, one of them being my roommate, that I would ask him every single time I make an English mistake to correct me. And he would do it. We even reached the point where whenever I made the mistake twice, I had to do 10 push-ups. And it's a bit harsh, but it helped, I guess so, at least.
Yeah, those are definitely some hardcore tips. And yes, guys, how to win friends and influence people is one of the Bibles when it comes to networking. So I, and of course, all of us, we all recommend buying that book, that is a great investment. We can also just type it in the chat, I guess, if someone's confused about the title. So another area where soft skills play a vital role is networking. So during last week's panel, we touched upon one of the biggest benefits of networking, which is finding mentors. So other than that, have you guys experienced any other benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. So finding mentors is a clear benefit, but there's a few other ones that, like, for me personally, I think are huge. So personal development and growth. When I reach out to people, I try to learn as much as I can from that person. So it's not necessarily that I reach out for a referral or to network or to get something in return, but just to talk and to listen to different perspectives and to get different opinions on things. It helps me grow as a person, both personally and professionally. In addition, when I was interviewing to some of my positions, you can easily get help with interview prep from people who've done it before. So if you're looking for a position at, say, Google, an engineering position, then you reach out to a Google engineer and say, hey, I'm in this position. Do you mind helping me with my interview prep? And that could be a great resource. And yeah, on top of all that, just making new friends, honestly, like the team that I'm currently working with, Ali, Nandana, and Harry, I mean, we've all met through one form of networking or the other, and now we've become great friends. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Awesome. Ali, what about you?
Me, I think they're twofold. Like, networking is like very helpful to open your perspective. It allows you to learn new things in areas that are not directly related to yours, and it's like really great. And two, it's just frankly to, like Brian said, expand your professional network, which can help you a long way, not just on like the typical professional matter of, this person referred you, but also to like find your next co-founder, your next business partners. Like Brian said, actually, we met through networking. We networked with each other, and fast forward a few months, we ended up here. It's I guess the best case in point.
Yeah, absolutely. And you all get to meet me, of course, and we all know I'm
Of course.
However, Harry, what about you?
I think the biggest help has been getting a job. So regardless, it was getting Google or getting McKinsey, both were from referral. To be honest, the last 3 recruiting seasons, I got all of my interviews through referrals. So that's a really powerful tool.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for me personally, it was just finding that support system, because interviewing was hard. And after multiple rejections, multiple failures, you need that support system to make sure that you don't give up, and someone to help you reevaluate those failures and, course correct. And of course, I've been lucky enough to find a wonderful mentor at work through who I met when I was interviewing for Amazon. So yeah, so just to summarize key points, of course, referrals are a great way and a great benefit when it comes to networking. And then you're going to meet amazing people, and you might become friends for life. And then you're going to get mentorship within the workplace too. So based on what we said, it sounds like having a strong network has a lot of benefits, and I'm sure that our audience would agree. However, how can international students acquire such a high quality network? So Harry and Ali, as ESL students, I feel like it might have been harder to get over the fear of networking. I would like you guys to talk about what you went through and how you got over that fear.
Yeah, I think it was specifically tough for me, considering it was my first shift into consulting. So I believe 3 things really helped me. Number 1 is to take the time to prepare and research the other person. Look at what they've been through, what their interests are, and where their passions lie. And really, I would do the 2-to-1 rule. Twice as much time on researching versus 1 on talking. I think the second strategy I used was to talk with a friend or mentor that I was more comfortable practicing the networking call with. For example, when I get stressed, I typically talk to Nandana and Ali just to get a feel of what's it like to talk to strangers. Not that you're strangers, but it really helped. I think the third is that to believe in our own value. we all have a lot of value to offer. And don't think that when you don't have a job, you don't have value. That's not true. Everyone has a strong value.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And of course, a language is just a language. It's something that you can always improve on. So Ali, what about you? What did you do?
Like, first of all, before I share what I do, I want to reiterate that this is like extremely difficult. Like, networking like alone is difficult, and as English as second language makes it like even harder. It's like very difficult, and I feel for every single one of you. I know you must find it tough, and I still find it tough to this day. But I'd say like first trick that I did, and here, Frank, I see your question on how to practice sound like a native speaker. But I try to find patterns that are essentially independent of which language you speak. For instance, I was fortunate enough to speak a few languages, and in each one, it's important to be structured. So when I would speak my native language of French, I would try to speak in a very structured manner, such that even when I speak English, maybe I will forget one or two vocabulary words, but I will still have good communication because it will be like structured. So that's the first thing, is like practice the skills that are the same across languages, and you'd be surprised, but there are a lot. The second one, it's in English. Like for anything, practice is the key, and bringing yourself out of your comfort zone is super important. I would like purposely go to events that I'm not interested. I would try to talk to people that I like don't have like any interest in talking to, just really to practice my networking skills and my like communication abilities. And it's taken me a long way, both in order to improve my communication, but also because I met a lot of like interesting people, and I like discovered new interests. So I highly advise you to try new things. Like, I mean, it sounds cliche, but life is short, and we should all like enjoy as much as we can.
Absolutely. So why don't we all share some of our personal tricks or resources that we use to help us when it comes to networking? So Brian, do you want to go first?
Yeah, gladly. Wait, do I have to? I'm just kidding. So resources that I use, I guess one thing I like to do is read a lot of articles. And, there's a few common popular websites like Medium, and just reading articles on how to network, or the details of, writing an email or a LinkedIn message, or what to say in a conversation. And there's a lot of good articles out there if you just Google and do some reading. And that's part of like the theory that I was talking about, which is, trying to understand the theory before actually applying it. And then another good tip is reaching out to people with similar interests and background as me. So for example, I'm a U of T undergrad, and I'm interested in machine learning professionally, artificial intelligence for social good. And, as hobbies, I'm interested in soccer, for example. So when I go on LinkedIn and try to look for someone to network with, I usually look for someone who's a U of T alumni, for example, or who's interested in machine learning as well. And that makes it easy to sort of break the ice in a conversation. Like, hi, I noticed you also went to University of Toronto. So did I. It's a pleasure to meet. Like, it's a good conversation starter. And I recommend like you guys try that out too.
Great. So I think my tip would be, so I have a disclaimer. So networking comes naturally to me because I'm extremely talkative, as you can see, and I'm also extroverted. But my tip for you is to find that friend of yours who's extroverted and take them along to networking events when you get the chance, because they'll be your anchor and you'll feel more comfortable kind of going off of their conversation, and they can always introduce you, and it just makes things easier. So that's my tip. Ali, what about you?
Sorry, the question was, what's the tip to network, right? Or like personal stories?
Just personal tricks or resources that we use for networking.
Okay. Yeah, I actually I have like two that I use, and I think like differentiate at least to an extent. But the first one is I try to not speak just about professional. Like, I try to keep the professional conversation as short as possible, and then I quickly switch to speak about hobbies and interests. Like these people that you network with and that I used to and I still network with, like, work and talk about work all day. So it's very useful for them to speak about like things that they're interested in. And ideally is that I find like interests in common and speak about them. And then really the cherry on top is when I try to mix the hobbies and the interests that they have with the professional life. For example, this might be abstract. I'll give an example. But I'm a big basketball fan. So whenever I hear someone speak about basketball, I speak a little bit with them about basketball. And then I ask them a question, like, say if I'm networking for like an investment banking position, I ask them, oh, which basketball player do you think would be the best investment banker? And then it's like a great way to mix both basketball, talk about banking, and it brings, I guess, a question that they're not used to ask. And in case you're wondering, to me, the best investment banker would be Michael Jordan, hands down. But the second trick, I guess, would be to, like I said, go to conferences that you're not really interested in. And this really helps your skills. Like one thing I did, I actually went to like an art and fashion conference. I was not interested in it. And now I promise you, I've been like following art way more closely. So it's pretty useful. I learned both how to network and developed a new interest. And hopefully in the future, I'll mix it with my professional aspect of things.
Awesome. So Harry, what about you? What are your personal tricks?
Okay, I have 2 secret weapons. Should I share?
Well, if you think you should.
I think our
Wait, how
audience
much?
is lovely. Well, I would.
I'm down to pay you to share. How much?
Let's say $1 billion. I'm sure we'll make $1 billion one day. But let me share. I think our audience should know. I think I have 2 tricks. One is the way you craft your LinkedIn message is super important, because when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn, you have 300 characters, and those are gold. I would take a 3-part strategy. Number 1 is explain why you're awesome. Second is to talk about the connection or alignment between you and the other person. It could be professional experience, could be interest, could be anything, but there has to be a connection. And the third step is call for action. That's something I learned from advertising. I wouldn't go for call for action of, yo, give me a referral. That typically wouldn't work unless you're super good friends. What I would ask for is 15-minute call. That's very low investment for the other person. And that leads to my second tip. When you're on that call, at the end, you have to close. Do not wait for that follow-up email. I would slide in this sentence. Instead of saying, can you give me a referral, which is really not that smooth, I would just ask, what do you think is the best way for me to apply? And 80% of the time, to even 90, they would say, yo, send me your resume. I'll forward to the HR. Like, got it. So those were my 2 personal tips. I have a third. If you want to call me one-on-one, I'll share the third.
Awesome. Okay, so just to recap, so our tips were, of course, Henry's powerful LinkedIn message, skillfully asking for a referral, meaning just ask what is the best way you think you should apply. Ali's tips were to attend events which are not really tied to your major. Mine was taking an extroverted friend to these events, and Brian's was reading a lot of articles on networking and using those tips to practice. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Brian.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess like it's hard to sort of nail down exactly how to network and exactly how to develop these social skills in a short conversation like this. And that's precisely why, Nandana, Harry, Ali, and I decided to sort of collaborate with Easy Career to come up with this program, a summer program that runs over a duration of 10 weeks. And the program is much bigger than simply teaching you soft skills and networking and communication skills and things like that. It's actually it's pretty ambitious, and I'd like to take a moment to share the details with the audience. If you can just switch the slides. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're developing this 10-week program. It's an opportunity for a student to work in a team of 4 to develop a high impact or to contribute and work on a high impact project throughout this 10-week period. And the idea is we looked at the top firms that we're working at, Google, McKinsey, Amazon, Bain, and we looked at exactly what those firms are looking for in their candidates. And we tried to distill that into a program to guarantee or to make sure these students have the highest possible chance of getting positions at top firms like this. So what will students gain from this program? Well, technical skills, soft skills, prestigious professional network. And yeah, so each one of these takes form in like workshops, in an entrepreneurial project that you work on throughout the program. And so the idea is we pair teams of 4 with mentors from the top firms. So throughout the duration, you'll be working with a dedicated mentor from one of these top firms. And that's an excellent opportunity to network right there and to apply the skills that we've been talking about. In addition, we have weekly lectures, weekly workshops delivered by the highest caliber people. For example, we have consultants from the best from MBB. We have technology professionals from FANG. Yeah, it's honestly, I mean, the way we looked at it, we had to work hard to get to the positions that we're at right now. And we thought, why not sort of distill all our knowledge into this 10 weeks and just design a program that the sole objective of the program is to make sure these students can get the kind of positions that we have right now. That's basically a summary of the program. And, if anyone's interested, we'd be happy to answer more questions and have one-on-one conversations as a follow-up.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we thought that it was the best way to combine a very solid experience on your resume with a great network and an amazing learning opportunity.
Awesome. So after this powerful slide, we're gonna open the floor for questions regarding networking, soft skills, or any other questions that you guys have.
Looks like there are 3 questions from the audience. Nandana, do you wanna?
Okay, yes. So I think the first question will probably be answered better by either Ali or Harry, but it is how to practice speaking in order to sound like a native speaker. Because I remember Harry was taking classes for actually reducing his accent. So I think you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yes, I believe I spent about 4 months listening to the same 10 audio files. And while I walk on the street, while I take in the car, wherever I go, I listen to those audio files and I try to pronounce the vowels of English because those are the hardest to get right. I believe the course you can find on Udemy called English Pronunciation, it teaches you the British pronunciation. It is not used in North America, but it's good enough, I believe. I think also Nandana has a lot to share around that because she grew up speaking with an Indian accent, but somehow she just got the American accent without practice. That's amazing. So I think you should answer that too after Ali.
Yeah, Ali, what about you? How did you practice speaking?
So I said a little bit of it in the, like when I was talking, but to me, one big thing is that I realized that there were like certain structures that were the same across the languages that I spoke. So I spoke like French, English, Spanish, and Arabic. And these were actually more important to a meaningful conversation and good communication skills than things like accent or vocabulary. So I tried to practice these in all of like the languages that I spoke. I would speak to my mom in a very structured way. I practiced a structured speaking by like understanding the theory and things like enumerating your points. And then whenever I'd speak like French or Spanish, I would do the same thing. So it's allowed me to minimize the fact that my vocabulary was not as good, my accent was not as great. And then the second thing is just like I mentioned, practice is key and doing it as much as possible outside of my comfort zone. And it's really what's happening. And in terms of accents, actually, in the beginning, I was trying really hard to lose my accent. Now I kind of gave up because I'm not sure if you can like completely lose it. And I've met like very successful professionals that have like a strong accent. I don't think it would harm you against your professional career as long as you have the right skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think accent shouldn't matter, but you have to just make sure that whatever you're saying, it is understood by the other person. So with that, the next question is, I think Brian can best answer this. So what articles do you recommend reading? Brian?
Oh, Brian, you're muted.
You're on mute.
Apologies. Saying good question, and I'd be happy to follow up like with specific examples or specific links to articles after the call. But just general categories include, how to network or how to craft a networking email, how to craft a LinkedIn message. If you just search those queries on Google, you'll get links to good articles. In addition, communication skills, so how to communicate effectively. Just those are the thoughts that I have off the top of my head.
Amazing. So we're gonna pick one last question, and I think this is an interesting one which we haven't really touched about, is how do we start a conversation at a career fair or when networking? Because there are a lot of people and it definitely can get intimidating. What do you guys think?
What I did was to research all the companies I was interested in and make sure find out why I was interested in them and use that as a conversation starter. And the second strategy was to find out if there's someone at that company. And then I'll just bring up their name saying, oh, I know this company worked with you, and it's a natural conversation starter.
Ali, what about you?
I think to me, two things. One, to be totally frank, I did not go to career fair as much because I was not very good at these type of networking where it was like 30 students and one person. But when I did go, I would again try to differentiate myself and try to speak not when the 30 students were there. So for example, when I see like the person outside the career fair just like taking a break, I would go up to them and say something like, oh, you must be tired. It must be very difficult to have like all these students around you. And then this is where I would find a way and then continue the conversation.
Awesome. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the fun part of the business interview prep. So I think Harry and Ali are going to take it from me here. And yeah.
Yes, before we move on, I think Ali has some announcement to make.
Oh yeah.
Sure. No, I was going to say, like, there are a lot of questions. We actually love speaking with every single one of it. We wish we had. But like two things we could do is that one is we will send link for Calendly if you guys want to speak one-on-one with one of us tomorrow. It's totally free. And the second thing is we actually, like us4, launched a platform called Volby that randomly matches students, or like that randomly matches people with each other for 5-minute video chat. So we highly encourage you to join it. We will be there. There's a high chance that you get matched with one of us. If not, you get matched with another student, and you'll be able to like practice. This is the best way to practice your networking skills and your elevator pitch. So this is going to be at the end of the sessions at 10:30 p.m. We highly recommend you to join it. Henry sent the website. It's www.volby.com. Just click on chat now. It's going to ask you for an access code, and the access code is Ignite. And just to reiterate, even if you don't get matched with one of us, we encourage you to like speak to the other person, get to know them, and practice your elevator pitch. That's the key. And looking forward to meet all of you.
Awesome. Okay.
Great. With that, we're going to move on to the business interview preparation. And there might be some technical audience here who are wondering why this would be beneficial for you. I think it's beneficial for two reasons. Number one is the behavioral part does play an important role in your technical interview process. And the second role is you never know when you're going to switch career, like me. So with that, Ali, do you want to get started?
Sure. So we're going to share with you like a few tips and the different steps that we did for business interview preparation. The first important step, and as cliche as it sounds, is to understand what your target firm looks for. And this means like going pretty deep in terms of the job description. And we understand like really well the requirement. And these are threefold. First one is background. Make sure that you have the relevant background and try to find a way on how you can make that background sound even more relevant. For instance, when I was applying to consulting firm, they said that they're interested in any background and they like mathematical background. So I would try to understand how mathematics can be related to consulting and speak about things like problem solving, think, and solve problem in a structured way. The second one is, the second thing you should look for and really understand is like the technical skills. Here, like it's just like financial analysis, Python, see like the technical skills that are needed. Try to double down on the ones that you know, and the ones that you don't know, either like if they're not important, like just disregard them. If they are, like find a way to learn them. The last one is soft skills. This, we spoke a billion times how important they are. The bigger one are communication, leadership. But again, try to really understand what type of leadership this company wants. This can be tricky just from the description, but we're going to share more insights later down the road on how you can understand, how you can better understand each target firm. Yeah, so moving on to the second slide.
Great, I'm gonna take this part. Before diving in, Ali, do you think we should have our audience do an exercise where they find a dream job description of theirs and just take a 1-minute read?
Yeah, absolutely, that's a great idea.
Great, so for our audience, if you want, take a minute to find the job that you're aiming for and read through that job description. While you're doing that, I'm gonna give you one task. Try to find if these areas are covered in your job description. It looks like our audience has finished looking at their job description, and sounds like all of these are pretty prevalent in terms of all jobs across the business industries. Ali, do you have any comments you want to make on the poll results?
Yeah, well, like all of these are like extremely important. I'd say that depending like on the different job descriptions, some will be more than others. So really try to pay attention. And if you have time, and we should probably like ask us questions at the end if this is confusing to you, but try to go to even second level insight and understand what type of problem solving this firm looks for. How do I get them? And then you could go like up to like 4th, 5th level insight, but just really try to like go very deep on understanding the target firm.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna use the McKinsey job description as a baseline for most business functions, because I believe most job description kind of look the same. So I'm gonna interpret what actually each one of these areas mean. So when it comes to first of personal impact, it really means 2 things. One is on your resume or in your stories, can I tell or identify impressive professional experiences? Do I find you aspirational? The second is, do you have the interpersonal skills in order to deliver this impact? Moving on to the second element of entrepreneurial drive. Again, it does not mean you need to start a startup. It does not mean that. It means that you have the motivation to do something extraordinary, and then you have the creativity and innovative mindset to bring new solutions to existing problems or find new problems to solve. On to the third of problem-solving skills. This is probably explained itself, but I think underlying that there are 2 pillars. A is the analytical skills that you're going to demonstrate in a finance quantitative interview or a case interview, which we'll talk about tomorrow. And second is, do you have the academic rigor? On to the last element of leadership abilities. This means, can you work on a team first? And then can you clearly communicate your ideas and use your influence to bring the team to a new vision? So this is my interpretation of McKinsey's job description, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the firm. So please don't take this as McKinsey's statement. On to the next part. Ali, do you want to take this?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is like complementing this by finding question banks. So now you understand what the firm looks for. Now it's really understand, like try to know what question they ask. So for different type of interviews, I'd love to share with you the resources that we actually used. For case interviews, there are a lot of business school case books. So essentially you can find like a practice case that you can practice with yourself or with a friend. The 3 that I used and 3 that Harry and I used are Kellogg case book, Warren case book, and Harvard Business School case book. These should be like very easy to find online. If you have trouble finding them, shoot us an email or WeChat, and we'll be more than happy to share them. Second one is for finance interviews. Here are the resources that I use: Wall Street Oasis and Break Into Wall Street. I didn't actually purchase the resources. I just like looked into the forum for questions. And then for behavioral interviews, and this is like extremely important, is Glassdoor, Quora, and Reddit. Glassdoor like is a question bank that people fill out a lot. Like I like would read like almost every single question on Glassdoor. Quora and Reddit are forums. To be totally frank with you, for 2 of my jobs, I went as far as asking on Reddit and Quora anonymously, like this is the job that I'm interviewing for. Here is what I know. I actually don't know this skills at all. What do you recommend me to do? It turned out that I did not expect at all, but people were super helpful. And to be even more transparent, I'll tell you the real thing. It was like for one of my finance jobs, they required SQL. I didn't know SQL, and I asked, hey, like I don't know SQL. This is my dream job. What do I do? And then people recommend me like a lot of different things and gave me the SQL questions. So what I did is I read the 5-hour tutorial on SQL, and then I practiced all the SQL questions that were given. And thank God they asked me 2 questions. It was 2 of the questions that they gave me. So like, needless to say that at least I passed the SQL part of my interview.
I'll hire you as a database engineer, Ali, if I get to. Great. I think the next part after you identify what are the questions they ask is to really identify the requirements and the gap between you and the bar. I find this as one of the most important steps of your interview prep design strategy part. So I'm going to walk you through an example and then later give you some time to do this yourself. So I will look at the 4 dimensions of a specific skill. So I will look at the expectation, meaning what do the firms want to see from a candidate in order to get a job? The second is, where is your skill currently at? And based on these 2, we're going to find the delta, which is the gap. How different am I to the bar I need to hit, right? And then after you fill that gap, you need to go a little above and beyond in order to land the top firm's jobs. So that requires a point of differentiation. So I'm going to use my example when it comes to problem solving. For a typical consulting firm, not just MBB, they expect you to solve a business case in 30 minutes with poise and creativity. And where I was at the beginning of summer was I could sometimes solve a case in about 40 minutes. And I thought about why and asked my friends who were in consulting. I think there were 3 things that was lacking. One was the business acumen. I didn't have that. And second was the way I delivered my messages. Last but not least is the creativity. I was just doing too much coding and not enough business thinking. And then I thought about, okay, so these are my gaps. How can I go above that bar to make sure I land that job? I think for me, I share a few advantages compared to other people. One is I love math. Well, I used to love math at least. And then I used to run startups. And then the startup ideas are typically not talked about among candidates. And as well, I came from a technical background, so I know how to automate things in an operations case. So these are the things I use to demonstrate myself. I want to give the audience about 2 minutes to look at 2 other criteria on your own and look at what they expect, where at, what's the gap, and how do you get above and beyond. So let's set a timer of 2 minutes and we'll get back to this. Okay, now it's 9:55 and we might have gotten a head start on how to identify the gaps. But now we see the gaps, the better question to ask is, how do we bridge these gaps? So we're gonna share a few resources. Ali will talk about the behavior and finance, and I'll walk you through the case interview resources.
Absolutely. So the behavioral for the behavioral interview, like 3 main things. The first one is I would really try to talk about the impact of my professional experiences. And this we can't emphasize it enough, but uniqueness, differentiation matters so much in the job search, and even more during this time of COVID. So here, I would try to really emphasize on how my professional experiences are diverse, and I would push you to think about this. Second one is like the extracurricular activities. Try to find the link between the extracurricular activities and the skills that their target firm needs. The last one is storytelling framework. I actually, through Harry, I learned this framework called Faraday that is extremely useful. We teach it as one of the components in that summer camp that Brian was mentioning. But I'm sure you could like think of more. But these are like the three crucial ways. In terms of finance interviews, I, to be honest, use like these three for investment banking ones. The investment banking by Perl and Rosenbaum is a very good one. And for quant, the one that I used was quantitative questions from Wall Street job interviews and a practical guide for quant finance interviews. For case interviews, I'll leave it to Harry to talk about them. But again, a really important thing is differentiation and mentorship, because all of these, it's my mentors that gave them to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, happy to talk about the case interview process. I think I'm gonna use my journey as an example. To begin with, I had mentors from McKinsey to help me understand the consulting industry, and they pointed me to a book, which is The McKinsey Way, which talks about how consultants think and how consultants talk to each one another. So that was the starting point for me to understand the consulting industry. But I still had very little knowledge about the case interview process. So my mentor pointed me towards Case in Point, which is a classic book to talk about what the case interview is, how it's structured, what are the typical frameworks, and how you can excel in a case interview. After that theoretical knowledge, I asked my friends at BCG, I don't feel comfortable with frameworks, so what should I do? So he pointed me towards a website called rocketblocks.me. There, you're gonna have about 100 to 200 questions you can use to practice your framework abilities. I'd say the framework part plays a very important role in your case interview, because if you get that wrong, it's hard to pass that interview beyond that point. So then I had the abilities to solve a case on my own, but still I wouldn't know what would be the best delivery look like. So my friend shared with me this resource called Look Over My Shoulder, which is a set of audio recordings that Victor Chang, which is a famous guy in management consulting, he'll walk you through what would be the best answer sound like. So after that, I believe you're ready to do some live cases. At the beginning, it's crucial to do it with someone who are good at casing. That means could be a professional mentor, can be your friend at MBB or other consulting firms. When you feel like you're in a good shape, there's a website called preplounge.com. There you're gonna get matched with other folks online to practice live cases. Practicing live cases is extremely important, and tomorrow we're gonna walk through what a live case will look like for an MBB setting. So with that, let's move on to the plan that you need to develop in order to execute on these steps and use the resources. I think I typically follow a 5-step strategy with the help of mentors. So number one is to really identify what my goals are. For example, my goal was to land one of MBB or maybe Oliver Wyman in Carney. So that's my goal. And I looked at what are the specific requirements and realized my personal impact, problem solving, these two pillars were a bit weak. So I laid out my tasks as the resources I pointed out. I wanted to do 100 cases. I wanted to read Case in Point. I wanted to read case interview secrets. I want to watch all of the Watch Over My Shoulder audio files. Those were my tasks. And the third step is to actually estimate how much time each task would take you. Because as humans, we typically are overly optimistic. So I allocated the time and calculated that it would take me about a few hundred hours. So I pulled out my calendar and looked at how many days between that day and the interview day. So I calculated how much I need to put in terms of effort per day, fit into the tasks on my calendar, and then the last step is to execute. And you need a feedback cycle when you execute. It's to execute, measure, and adjust. So this part is extremely important to have someone who can guide you, because again, case interviews are quite subjective. So you want a second pair of eyes in order to make sure you're on track. So with that, I'm gonna leave the last tip for Ali.
Yeah, so like last tip is practice, 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 and practice with professionals. So for this, there are 3 steps. The first one is like find these professionals and these mentors. We talked in the networking presentations on the best way to do it. And if you have more questions, again, like I'm more than happy to continue answering them on the tomorrow on the one-to-one Calendly talks, or later today at 10:30 on the Vobi talks. Second one is use this professional to try to understand, get insights on the questions that are asked, and really do mock interviews with them. So one question I think that we didn't have time to answer is like, what's a good way to stay in touch with the professionals? One thing that I used when I had the good feeling with the professional is actually ask them to do a mock interview. This would make sure that we have like a second session and we meet, and I would do this mock interview. So this, yeah, this was the last tip. But to recap, in order to build an interview prep strategy that works for you, there are 7 steps that Harry and I use, and we recommend you. The first one, understand what your target company looks for. This is going more than just the job description and understanding how it fits you. The second one is interpreting the firm's requirement. Each firm has a very specific one, and try to understand them well. Third one is complement your understanding by finding question banks. We share the resources, go dig on them. If you have more, please share them with us. We're more than happy to like share it with the rest of the students. 4, evaluate yourself against the requirement and know how you can differentiate yourself. Differentiation is key, especially today. 5, leverage the available toolkit. There are a lot of other resources that you can find, use them. 6, develop a plan for you specifically. Harry shared his. Feel free to adapt his to how your timeline is, how your firm's requirements are. Maybe they're the same and you can just use his, that's easy. And the last one is practice the professionals. Networking, or like more importantly than networking, mentorship is extremely important. It is, to be honest, what helped me like in almost every single aspect of the things that I do in life. And here is like one key component to it. Just practice interviews with your mentors.
Great. Thank you, Ali. I think that wraps up the teaching part of our workshop. I think I want to spend a few minutes on Q&A, given we still have a bit of time. I think the first question I've heard is, what is a case interview? So to answer that question, we'll better answer that tomorrow at 9 p.m. We're gonna do a live case with you guys. And in short, a case interview is to simulate a business situation where you solve an ambiguous business problem. I'll give you 3 examples. For example, let's say a company's revenue, or let's say profit is declining. The CEO is approaching this consulting firm and wants to understand how to increase their profitability. Another example could be a nonprofit wants to increase their impact. How can I do it? And third can be anything like, okay, I am a taxi driver. How do I maximize my revenue? So it can be anything, or even as weird as, oh, there's an endangered animal. How can we stop them from extinction? So it can be anything. But Ali, do you have anything you want to add?
I think you've said it all.
Great. And the second question is, where can I find a friend from MBB? I think you already have 2 friends.
Yeah.
Right? Happy to be all of your friends. Okay, let's go for one last question, and then we're gonna hand it over to Nandana and Brian. Okay, would you mind to share more about mentorship, especially how to actually maintain a mentorship and whether they're willing to be a mentor and ask for their mentorship. I think Ali and Nandana do really well in this area. Do you want to talk about it?
Ali, do you want to
Ladies
go
first?
No, it's about equality. You can take it first.
Yeah, no, sure. Like there are a couple of things. Like one is, like I said, to me, I would try to find mentors that would be more than just a professional relationship and have hobbies between them. I had mentors that I play soccer with. Had mentors that I play that I go to like museums with, and that's like very helpful. Another method is just to try to maintain a recurring meeting. So it's like actually very tough to get the second meeting. And what I try to do is like find things to discuss after 6 months. For instance, if my mentor tells me that he's going on a project in another country for a few months, I say things like, oh, I'd love to hear about it. Like at the end of my meeting, it would be great to like discuss in 6 months how things are going, and I'd love to update you from my side. And I would just like reschedule something 6 months down the road. And yeah, these are two things that I can think of from the top of my head. But if more come up, I'll share them.
Cool. I honestly don't think I have anything more to add, but I think one key thing when it comes to building relationships, not just mentor-mentee relationships, is to be vulnerable. Let the other person know your fears, your failures. Just tell them, oh, I'm stressed regarding this interview, or I'm worried that I won't get a job. And more often than not, people will be willing to help you, and they will be willing to be your mentor, or at least help you to whatever capacity that they can.
Yeah, and also, sorry, I forgot, but one last thing I actually did is that whenever it was someone's birthday, I actually wished them. And I tried to send them a personal note however I could. This is actually in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'd love to say it's my tip, but I can't take it. So
yeah, it's just about being thoughtful to really maintain that relationship. Just text them after a couple of months, ask them, how are your kids doing, or how's your girlfriend? Whatever they talk about, just make sure that you reach out again and ask them questions related to that, so they feel super important.
Yeah. I want to hand over to Nandana and Brian for our technical part.
Yeah, I think Brian will be the one who's leading the presentation. So I think he can switch to sharing his screen.
Great. I will let you guys share it, and I will like be off camera for the next 30 minutes, but I will see all of you guys on the Hobby chat right after, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, amazing. Let me just switch my screen. Can you guys see the slides?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so Nanda and I will walk through the technical interview. We're sharing our perspectives as engineers at Google, Amazon. But again, I'd want to reiterate that by no means are we speaking on behalf of those companies. We're purely sharing our personal perspectives. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is understand what your target company looks for. And the most straightforward way of doing this is finding the job description and then analyzing, interpreting the job description. But before you even do that, I would highly recommend that you search for your company and try to identify their mission, their vision, and their values, and try to sort of know or prepare your mindset to share stories from your experience that highlight how you fit culturally within that vision or within that mission or values. Then after you do that, then you start analyzing the job description and look for three main components. What's the background that this job expects of me? What are the technical skills that they expect me to have? And what are the soft skills they expect me to have? So we'll walk through an example of this. This is an example of a software engineering university graduate job description at Google. And as you can see from the bullet points, in terms of background, they expect you to have a bachelor's in computer science or related technical field or equivalent practical experience. And this is a recent thing where Google doesn't actually require an undergraduate degree anymore, which is interesting. Second bullet point, software development experience, coding in a general purpose language. Third bullet point, examples of coding in one of the following languages. You have C, C++, Java, JavaScript, or Python. And then the final one, experience work with data structures or algorithms. And you can acquire this experience through several different ways, highlighted on the slide. So yeah, these job descriptions are often lengthy and contain a lot of information, and you want to distill that down to the areas that are important for you. So we, on the following slides, we have an example of this where you identify the highlights of the description. So first bullet point, main highlight there is equivalent practical experience. So as long as you can show on your resume that you're interested in computer science or in software engineering, then you should be fine. Second point is general purpose programming language. And general purpose languages are essentially Python, C++, and Java. Those are the ones I can think of anyways. The third one, sorry? Don't code in Haskell.
Yeah, or assembly. I'll use that assembly.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone's looking for assembly, but yeah, so experience with data structures and algorithms, that's really important, and we'll talk about that a little more. Yeah, on the following slides. So I guess I can walk you through the basic components of the interview process, and this varies from company to company, but overall it should look pretty similar. A main thing that's recurrent throughout is the coding assessment, and so for me the way that worked is the first step of the interview process was completing a coding assessment where I was sent 2 questions. I logged into this platform and I had an hour and a half to solve 2 questions. And after I solved that, then I moved on to the next step. And the next step is either a phone interview or an in-person interview. In this current situation, probably a phone interview. And in that interview, they test for behavioral as well as coding skills. The behavioral interview is mostly, talking about your background, your experiences, answering questions that we all love, like tell me about a time where you demonstrated leadership or impact or blah, blah, blah. The coding interviews are a little more structured. Depends on your seniority level. So if you're a new grad or an intern, you're looking at data structures and algorithm questions. If you're more senior, then probably system design questions. So algorithms and data structures, I'll talk about that a little more. System design is kind of like, if you were to design Twitter or Facebook, what are the different components that are required? So you'd have to have a high level idea of how like databases connect to servers and how requests and responses work, and what are the different REST APIs that you'd implement, and whether you'd use a cache or not. Also these like system components. Yeah. Anyways, so here we have something very similar to what Harry and Ali discussed in their business preparation sides, and essentially, you lay out the different requirements, and then you evaluate yourself against those requirements in order to see where the gaps are and what you need to improve on. So, for example, one of these is programming language, and Nandana, I think it'd be helpful if maybe you walk us through how you would fill in one of these rows in this table.
Yeah. Okay. So let me give you an example. So when you're picking a programming language to do your algorithms and data structures, make sure you're picking something where you can code fast. Please do not pick something like C++, because even if you're extremely good at C++, under that stress, you might make syntactical errors, or you might forget to include some files. Whatever it is, your code will not run, and it might be for something extremely silly, and engineers do tend to notice that. So I was comfortable with Java, but I decided to go for Python to pick as my language when it came to algorithms and data structures, only because Python, I could write it faster and it's just easier to understand. So the expectation for a programming language would probably, if we're rating it on a scale of, let's say, 0 to 5, it would be somewhere around 4. right? Where, you know, they of course expect you to know basic syntax, but they wouldn't ask you any language specific questions when it comes to the programming language. And they would notice if you're making syntactical mistakes when it comes to something simple like loops, which I used to do. So the first thing you need to understand is how well versed you are with the language. So if the expectation was somewhere around 4, my current state was probably at like 1.5 or 2. So there was a gap, right? And to bridge that gap, what I did was make sure that I extensively read the docs and also take a couple of courses in Python and make sure that whatever work that I did moving forward was in Python, which really helped with bridging that gap between the programming language. And the same when it comes to algorithms and data structures. The expectation is you're able to solve a medium question in 20 minutes. And my current state at that point, I would spend more than 45 minutes solving a medium question, and sometimes I wouldn't even be able to come up with the solution. So there again, there was a huge difference, right? And then thinking, if you have to think about how to bridge that difference, it's about how many questions I need to do, and also thinking about how much time I'm spending on each question. And I can elaborate that on the next slide where we're going to talk about resources.
Amazing. That's a great example. So that was, you know, programming language. There's a bunch of other things you need to think about, algorithms, data structures, system design, soft skills like communication, project management, leadership. You know, how are you going to demonstrate those in the interview, on your resume? What's the expectation and what do you need to do? Maybe you need to work on a project to gain more leadership skills, more team working skills. Maybe you need to be involved in extracurriculars. Yeah, all good questions. We can move on to the next slide. So data structures and algorithms, and we have a dedicated slide for this because it's a very important part of the technical interview. And here we have, you know, a few examples of important data structures and algorithms that you need to know. So for data structures, you have lists, stacks, queues, hash maps, trees, tries, and graphs. And note that it's not sufficient to just know how to use these. You actually need to know the time complexity and the space complexity of every operation that can be done on one of these data structures. And you know, you might ask, like, will someone ask me in the interview, what's the time complexity of this or that? No, but you're going to be using these data structures to implement your solution. And at the end of the question, they'll almost always ask you, okay, analyze the complexity. And if you already know the complexity of different operations and different data structures, then you know you can answer that question in a breeze. But yeah, it's an absolutely crucial part of the interview. Algorithms are the different families of algorithms: search algorithms, sort algorithms, greedy algorithms, divide and conquer, recursion, graph algorithms, and dynamic programming. And again, I would really study these well, study the theory, study the complexity of the different operations, and just have a good, solid understanding, because they test for this as like one of the most important parts of the technical interview.
Yeah, and
leveraging resources. Yeah, Nandana, can you take this one?
Yeah, so also I just want to reiterate that focus more on trees and graphs as opposed to, let's say, lists or linked lists, because during your onsite, you're going to get the probability of getting trees and graphs is definitely higher than lists or linked lists. So moving on, we have a lot of resources when it comes to the different components of an interview, and I would really encourage you guys to take notes. Okay, so the behavioral interview component is something that we were inspired by from Harry and Ali's slide. So it's pretty much the same format where you have to think about your impactful professional experiences and building those stories, and also make sure you have extracurricular activities so that you have something to talk about, you know, and you seem like a really interesting person. Basically, in these behavioral interviews, people want to realize that you're someone that they would like to be friends with, and you're someone that they would like to spend 9 hours a day working together with. And we have a storytelling framework called Parade, and I'm gonna let Bryan elaborate a little bit on what that means.
Oh man, okay. Yeah, I'll try my best. I mean, Parade is as we mentioned, an effective way to tell a story and to answer most behavioral questions. I can give an example of using this for one of my personal experiences at Google. So what Parade stands for, it stands for problem, anticipated consequence, role, action, decision rationale, and end result. And I'll go through really quick, but again, we teach this in detail as part of the communication stream in our 10-week program. But for example, during my first internship at Google, my role was a software engineer, software intern on the search team. And the problem that Google was facing was there was not enough retention and engagement on the Google Android app. And this was a big deal because, you know, part of the strategy of Google moving forward is to focus more on mobile. And again, this is my personal opinion and not officially what Google says, but basically the action or the responsibility that I had was to work on a project to increase the retention on that app. And the action I took was to lead a project to optimize notification text, because notifications are a good way to get users coming back into your app. Decision rationale was exactly that. You know, if you can improve and optimize notifications, you can increase retention. And the end result was we increased click-through rates and click-to-dismiss ratios on these notifications by a massive double-digit %. And this exceeded the expectations of most of the team members and actually resulted in an increase in retention and engagement. So that was an example of telling a story using the Parade framework. And I went through pretty quickly, but again, we talk about this in great detail on how to master this, the art of storytelling, through some of the workshops we have in our program.
Awesome.
All right,
so I'm from Bryan to talk about the resources for coding interview and then company specific resources and also system design. So for these coding interview resources, this is what I did in order. And so first is this book called Cracking the Coding Interview, which is a pretty classic book. Almost everyone in tech would have heard about this book at some point or the other. So what is great about this book is that it has theoretical information regarding the different algorithms and data structures. So what I did was read all of that theory first, and then the questions towards the end of each chapter go from easy to hard. So I made sure that, I at least skimmed through those couple of questions and tried solving as many as I could. And after that, there's another book called Elements of Programming Interviews. So both Cracking the Coding Interview and Elements of Programming Interviews you can find for free online. However, Elements of Programming Interviews is more for Google level questions or Amazon level questions, where it's a little bit more difficult when it comes to compared to Cracking the Coding Interview. The problem is that Cracking the Coding Interview has become so classic that everybody knows all of the questions that are on it. So nobody really asks those questions in interviews anymore. So I would really recommend like Elements of Programming Interviews if your dream company is, let's say, Google. And after that, you can, of course, go to the Google Resource Library. We can share the link again later in the chat, but they have a ton of resources, especially dedicated for interview prep, whether it's like videos or text resources. And next, of course, is all of our absolute favorite website, which is LeetCode. So make sure that, you're really grinding LeetCode. And of course, LeetCoding is also a skill. And there are a lot of components when it comes to LeetCode questions, because there are so many questions. You have to think about, I think one major tip that I would give is always go for breadth over depth, meaning that don't pick one algorithm or one data structure and try to do all of the questions in that. You don't know which algorithm or which data structure you're going to get asked during the interview. So make sure that at least you have a high level knowledge regarding all of them, as opposed to very intimate knowledge regarding one or two of them. And if you're not a fan of LeetCode, then another website is called CodeSignal, where they gamify the process. And it is a little bit more structured than LeetCode because they have like an interview prep section. And of course, again, CodeSignal is free. I know that LeetCode has a premium component. I personally paid for the premium component because I was able to see company specific questions and do those accordingly. But again, if I personally use it, and I would recommend that you buy it at least for 2 months and try. And another important resource is PRAMP for mock interviews. Mock interviews are extremely, extremely important, and we always underestimate the amount of stress that we're in when it comes to these interviews. There are so many times that I messed up an easy question. I remember during one interview, I had a question where it was write the algorithm to merge two sorted lists. That was the easiest question that I could get, but the amount of stress that I was in, I managed to mess up even a question like that. So make sure that you're doing those mocks, and believe me, it will really, really prepare you for, you know, the day of your actual interview. And next is our system design components. So these are for companies that do test for system design. Amazon, for the new grad and, you know, SDE1 positions, they don't test for system design. And Google, of course, Brian can give you a little bit more information. But however, we have a GitHub repo called System Design Primer. If you Google it, you'll immediately find it. It's almost like the Bible for system design. What I did was read through it and also practice a couple of questions, meaning, for example, how to design Netflix, how to design Twitter, how to design Messenger, and you might also just get asked how to design Zoom because it's become super popular now. And the other two resources, which is Grokking the System Design Interview and Grokking the Object-Oriented Design Interview, they're on a website called educative.io, and those are both paid. I was able to use them because a friend bought them, but those are, again, excellent resources. And the most important one is company specific. So to find questions that were asked at the company that you're looking for, definitely look at Glassdoor. But one really useful resource is LeetCode Forum. So I remember probably 2 weeks before my Amazon onsite, some wonderful human being posted a list of all the questions that multiple candidates got asked during their Amazon Insight on the LeetCode Forum. And honestly, like, I went through all of those questions, and 2 of the questions that I got asked during my onsite was from that list. So definitely make use of the LeetCode Forum. It is an absolutely underrated resource. So moving on to the next slide. So here we're gonna talk about developing a plan that works for you. And here again, we've taken inspiration from Harry and Ali's wonderful presentation. But here again, you're gonna identify your objectives and key results, right? So in this case, it would be, let's say, something like being able to solve a medium question in 20 minutes or at least 25 minutes. And lay out the tasks that you want to complete. For example, it can be something like practicing 100 LeetCode questions. So make sure that, you know, all of that is clearly laid out. And another tip is nobody knows how many LeetCode questions you need to solve. Trust me, I've asked everyone I know how many questions I needed to solve, and nobody was able to give me the right answer. It's all about how much time you're able to solve a medium question in. So if that takes you 100 questions, fantastic. If that takes you 300 questions, great. You're gonna have to do 300 questions, unfortunately. So it's all about how much time you're spending on each question. And I personally would recommend to not just estimate, but overestimate the amount of time each task takes. For example, I was super optimistic and thought that I could do probably like 5 questions in about, you know, maybe almost like 6 hours on a given day. However, when I started out, I realized that almost each question took me more than an hour and a half, sometimes because I really needed to understand the fundamentals regarding an algorithm or a data structure, especially if there were like medium or hard questions. So overestimate the amount of time each task takes, fit those into your calendar, and again, have a feedback loop. So I would recommend creating a Google Sheet, write down the question that you're solving, write down how much time it took you to come up with a solution, write down whether you were even able to come up with a solution or not, and really go, and after every 5 or 10 questions, look at a pattern. And if you see a mistake, then of course, like, again, course correct. And, you know, this will also help with mocks. And I'm gonna let Brian take over to go to the next slide.
Yeah, so, you know, everything we said is I guess what like you would do first, nail down the theory and learn your stuff. But I think in order to nail this home, you really need to practice with professionals. And, you know, professionals could be either people working at the companies that you hope to join, or friends who've been through something like this before, or simply friends who are good at data structures and algorithms help you. So, 3 steps. First step, find mentors and buddies that can help you. Second step is try to recognize patterns in the questions. And this really comes with practice, because as I mentioned, most questions fall into one of the different algorithms categories or one of the different data structures that you can use. So as you start doing more and more questions, you'll be able to right away, realize, okay, I need to use a queue for this, or a graph, or a try, and I need to maybe use dynamic programming to solve this kind of question. The third point, and just reiterating on what I've been saying, and that's do a lot of mock interviews and really practice. That's the only way you'll get to a point where you're comfortable at these interviews, where you're not stressed, and where you can solve that problem and demonstrate that you're a good fit for that company. So with that being said, I'd like to re-mention our summer program here, and this is the same slide from the previous time. But again, what is the program and what is the objective? So the way we were thinking about this is, in the current situation, students don't really have the opportunity to get internships or to best prepare for jobs post the crisis. So in this program, you'll have the opportunity to work on a high impact professional experience that is more impactful and more valuable on your resume than an internship per se. And you'll be guided throughout by mentors from top firms. So it's an excellent opportunity to learn from these professionals and to network at the same time. And throughout, we focus on several different components: technical skills, soft skills, prestigious professional network, and that impactful experience that goes on your resume. And, we think this is like all these tips that we've been giving in this session, in the session last week. This is a great program to sort of learn everything in detail and be prepared to hit the ground running after this crisis is over, to find the dream job that you're after. Yeah, and we'd be happy to answer more questions if you have them. But also at this point, I'd like to take a minute to mention that after these sessions, we hope to have everyone hop over to this tool that we designed. It'll be an opportunity for you to network with us, to ask us questions, to have one-on-one chats with us, 5-minute chats, as well as to talk to each other and learn from each other and network with each other. So the website is called www.vobi.com. We'll share it in the chat. And we have a special access code for this meeting or for the session. And the access code is Ignite, IGNITE. And again, we'll share that in the chat. And basically how it works, you log in and you press a button and it will match you randomly with someone else in the room. So either another participant of this call or one of us for 5-minute one-to-one chats. And when you're done with that chat, you match with another person and you keep matching. And it's a great opportunity to practice all the networking skills that we've been talking about, as well as to match with us and ask us more questions and to talk within yourselves. Yeah, Nandana, do you have anything else to add? You're muted, sorry.
Sorry, I actually don't have anything else to add. Like, you covered pretty much all of it, and also extremely well, I may add. So we can open up the floor to questions
Thank you.
Have regarding technical interviews. Okay.
Yeah.
So
the question, I see one right out the bat. Can you clarify what will the 4-person do what will the students do in this team? Basically, the students will first be given the task, or taught actually by these mentors, how to brainstorm, how to identify a high potential idea to work on. And if the students aren't able to identify that idea, we help them identify an idea. And the idea is, throughout the 10 weeks, they'll be working on launching that idea and getting measurable metrics and results that they can go on their resume. So for example, something like, I worked in a team of 4, launched a website that had 1,000 visitors within a month. That would be one of the examples that you could put. And again, I'd like to reiterate, that's not the sole objective of the program. Throughout, there are workshops and one-on-one sessions to teach all the other aspects of the skills that you need to land the job, including technical, soft skills, and networking skills, and more. I hope that answered the question. There's another one here. If I'm in electrical engineering, how should I prepare for IT interview? Good question. So electrical engineering is actually one of the fields that is close to computer engineering. So this shouldn't be too tough. I mean, you have an understanding of circuits and computer architecture maybe. So I'd say focus on, as we mentioned earlier in the slides, identifying what your target position is looking for, and then working towards developing those skills. So if you lack maybe software or coding skills, then practice on LeetCode, study online course. Coursera is a great resource for this. I personally used it when preparing for Google. There's a course on data structures and algorithms. And you don't really need that you don't really need an undergraduate degree to learn everything required to get that job. Could you explain what is Parade again? Yeah, we'd love to spend more time on Parade, but as I mentioned, it's hard to sort of like nail down nuances and the details of how to effectively use this framework in the short amount of time that we have. But essentially, it's a way to answer most of the behavioral questions that you might be asked. For example, tell me about a time where you demonstrated an impactful experience. That's a typical question that you'd use Parade to answer. And I can go over what it stands for again. Problem, anticipated consequence, role, action, decision rationale, and end result. We have a dedicated section in our program to teach Parade, as well as many other tools to nail down behavioral interviews.
Do we need to, let's see.
Do we need to apply for that 10-week program?
I would recommend, we do have limited spots. So yeah.
Wait, so I think you need to communicate with Easy Career, but I think the understanding is we have a limited amount of spots because we really want to make the program as exclusive and make it a positive learning experience for everyone in the program. So it's selective. But I would reach out to Easy Career after this call and mention the program and see what they tell you.
Yeah, and everyone should apply. We don't have the typical like application standards like, oh, you need a GPA above 3.9. We think like we see value in every single person. So we push you to apply and hope to see you at the interview stages and even hope better to see you and mentor you during the program.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I should add that the teams are made up of disciplinary students. So your team will have someone interested in tech, someone interested in consulting, in finance. So it's kind of designed to incorporate all different backgrounds. But yeah, let's move on to a different question.
So I think we can take like a last question, which is, are IT companies going to focus a lot on education background or majors? So I think you can observe from the slide that we put in front of you before, Google technically does not really even require a degree. They just need to see that you are interested in computer science and you have a passion for computer science. However, if you are from a prestigious university, of course, that is going to earn you extra brownie points. Let's say if you're from Harvard, MIT, of course, that is one of the first things that people will notice regarding your resume.
University of Toronto.
And also, I think you do, according to Google, from what I remember Brian saying, you do get an extra point if their GPA is about 3.6, right? Brian?
3.6, 3.5, above 3.5, above 3.6. And that's not a requirement. Like,
yeah, it's just an extra point.
Yeah, it's just an extra point. Like, again, there are multiple other ways to differentiate yourself through, for example, an impactful startup experience, launching a project, and it's I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Will GPA in the university influence our interview? Again, not really. And if your GPA is low, just don't put it on your resume. That's all.
GPA.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Right. Yeah, I was just gonna say GPA is important for the initial part, getting past the resume screening. Once you're in the interview, it's all about how you perform in that interview.
Yeah.
Data structure and algorithm are very important for data science. Yes.
Unfortunately, you have to lead code. Believe me, I tried to find my way around it. I could not. You have to. You will have to lead code. You have no choice.
Actually,
even
for a better data scientist.
Huh?
Yeah.
I think it makes you a better data scientist.
Yeah. No, it makes you a better software engineer in general.
for data analyst jobs, I think there are some that don't require as much technical skills. Am I right? You guys would know better. But I have friends, yeah, data analysts, not like very far from like the technical parts of data science, and more just taking data, removing it, cleaning it.
Yeah, I would say it depends on the company and the role. But at Google, for example, even the product management interviews, which you're not going to be coding, even those interviews have data structures and algorithms components. So yeah.
I mean, it is
Right.
So anyway,
Yeah.
so I think we're done with the questions for today, and we hope we're gonna see all of you at the website that Bryan mentioned. Again, it's www.vobi.com, and the access code is Ignite. So we'll see you over there, and maybe we can get to meet some fun people.
Yeah, we'll see all of you, and while you wait to get matched with one of us, definitely network with others. Feel free to turn your camera off or on. It's really up to you. Okay, should we go there now?
Yeah,
sounds good.
And again,
or should we hand it back to Molly?
Yeah, oh great, yeah, let's
we can do that.
Oh, it's okay, I'm okay. You guys can yeah, you can do the networking now.
Cool.
Do I need
Again,
to join you guys? You think?
it's up to you if you want to talk to us more.
I've talked a lot.
Molly's
okay.
like, enough is enough.
Not to me. Me and Molly have a vibe. You don't know. Okay, so we'll see you guys there. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for being with us this entire time. I know it was quite long, but again, we really hoped you learned something. So yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.